G'day folks, it's Nathan here from FVR Contracting, or FVR375 as many of you know me through the channel and socials. Today I'm going to do a video around a headline that was sent out through Shooters Union Australia yesterday, which is deeply concerning, pertaining to some pretty significant overreach through Qld Weapons licensing branch. And I'm going to talk through what some of the facts are and then what you as the shooting community can do about that. So I'll just put the headline up on the screen now so you can see that. Okay, so as you can see there, it's pretty sensational stuff. We've got essentially weapons licensing branch talking about large caliber bans potentially occurring in Queensland, and then refusing or limiting permits to acquire on the basis of those future potential bans. So I just want to clarify straight up, there is no ban in place in Queensland at the moment. There is no legislation change. The regulations have not changed, and the Weapons Act has not changed. With that in mind, why are we hearing from Queensland Weapons Licensing Branch that there is a potential ban of larger calibers going to occur without any information or communication being provided out to relevant stakeholders? Essentially, the answer is we just shouldn't be. Queensland Weapons Licensing Branch right now is significantly overreaching and providing information that is not backed by legislation or anything that is being shaped by an elected official anywhere. This is merely their own agenda that they're carrying on with now, which is not confirmed through any other source. Essentially, Weapons Licensing Branch are conducting opinion-based operations with an anti-firearms agenda, which is outside of legislation, lacks scrutiny, and lacks any form of accountability in terms of the information that they're providing out to the shooting public. Okay, so the information that's been provided out through Shooters Union and a couple of other means now, it certainly isn't theoretical information. It is actually happening. I'm just going to flash up on the screen now a redacted letter from a permit to acquire, and that's dated 19th of March 2025. It's up on the screen there now. Okay, and I'm just going to read that document out. Excuse me, looking at the paper as I do so. So, thank you for your application for a permit to acquire, lodged on 21st of February 2025 for big game match shooting, okay, which is one of the conditions of this particular licensee's license. The conditions currently endorsed on your firearms license include RE1, SC1, SC2, so that's recreational shooting A and B, shooting club A and B, and shooting club financial member. The decision part, accordingly I've determined the following condition is required to be placed on your licence before the permit to acquire will be issued. The letter is advice required pursuant to section 25 of the Weapons Act 1990. Okay, and just to clarify, the permit to acquire was for a 300 Win Mag. Okay, they've now placed a 999 condition on this applicant's permit to acquire application, which says the licensee may only use the category B bolt action 300 Win caliber rifle registered to this license in Queensland on an approved shooting range for the purposes of big game rifle match within the limitations of that range endorsement and with the express permission of the range officer. To remove any doubt, any other person lawfully taking possession of this weapon pursuant to section 35(6)(c) of the Weapons Act 1990 from the licensee may only use the firearm on an approved shooting range for the purpose of big game rifle match with the same limitations and with the same express permission of the range officer. The licensee or any other person is prevented from using this firearm for recreational shooting purposes within Queensland. So despite the fact that this person is licensed to conduct recreational shooting within Queensland using category A and B firearms, which the 300 Win Mag clearly is as a bolt action, we're now placing conditions on this licensee purely because they cited range use as their primary reason for the permit to acquire. completely pointless and not pursuant to any form of public safety or public interest at all, I would suggest. Okay, then highlights down the bottom. Should you wish to make a written submission in relation to this change of conditions, it should be received at this office no later than 21 days from the date of correspondence. Okay, so that'll come up again later because we're going to talk about how you deal with some of these issues when they do occur. Okay, this level of restriction and overreach in terms of placing conditions on licensed law-abiding shooters is not really indicated anywhere in legislation. This is an opinion-based piece which is new, unwarranted and frankly a waste of everyone's time that has been come up with recently. And I'll just remind you again, so the date of that letter that I just read out there was today, 19th of March 2025 was when that was received. So this isn't old information or something that's happened in the past. This is happening now. It's one example of many examples, but for the sake of brevity and clarity, I'll just use this one here. So there is really no basis for questioning genuine need based on the calibre or the cartridge size. And I would say that given that the licensee is licensed for recreational shooting and for shooting club use, which means that they use firearms on recreational lands lawfully, and they use firearms on approved shooting ranges lawfully. What is the difference? This restriction has never been in place before, and there is plenty of good reasons in accordance with the Animal Care and Protection Act 2001 and Humane Destruction Standards to be utilising a 300 Win Mag in a number of scenarios during feral animal control, culling and recreational hunting activities which are lawful, ethical and completely appropriate. So just on that, looking at the Animal Care and Protection Act 2001, you are required to use a method when killing an animal, let's just call it what it is, that minimises suffering of an animal under all circumstances, and that includes, as I just said before, hunting, pest control and culling. So when you're shooting large animals such as buffalo, large deer, brumbies, feral horses, feral cattle, donkeys, camels, large pigs, what other animals are on that sort of list? There's a number of animals that require a larger level of energy when they're being dealt with. Limiting what people can utilise in the field and saying that we're going to potentially in the future ban large calibre firearms actually goes in completely the opposite direction in supporting animal welfare outcomes, which all of us as recreational hunters strive to achieve. So, Queensland potentially looking at bans in the future of large calibres is completely inappropriate. There are a number of scenarios backed by recommendations in a number of resources such as the PestSmart resource, which highlight minimum calibre requirements and minimum energy requirements for dealing with those larger animals. So obviously not particularly appropriate to take them off the table and not what anyone wants to see animal welfare outcomes suffer as a result of poorly considered policy which actually has no basis in legislation whatsoever. So you wouldn't accept this level of overreach from Queensland Roads and Transport if arbitrarily they decided they were going to make some policy decisions and start informing people that we're going to start banning motorcycles, we're going to start banning V8s. In fact, we might just ban anything with a turbo on it because it's a little bit fast and we don't really like it, which is not backed up by legislation. In fact, if that was the case, you'd see a massive backlash occur, given the the constraints being placed on a free country, a free state in a democratic environment. What's occurring here, again, and I've said a number of times, is overreach by Queensland Weapons licensing, and it wouldn't be tolerated in any other area. The other thing I'd remind you is that just like Queensland Roads and Transport, the services that we are mandated to use through Queensland Weapons licensing, we're paying for. Your licence isn't free, your permits to acquire aren't free, and they're not being considered appropriately in line with legislation that is in place currently. And I'd say it's disingenuous and poor communication to be highlighting to people that there's going to be a ban on large calibre firearms without that being backed up by any other information whatsoever. And obviously it's significant grounds that if you wish to have those decisions reviewed, then I would suggest that that information would be very simple to review with a positive result on your end as a shooter, given that it has no basis whatsoever. On behalf of shooters in Queensland from all walks, recreational shooters, professional shooters, occupational users, I'm really dissatisfied with what's occurring currently within Queensland weapons licensing and the level of service we're receiving, again, that we pay for from this government agency who is supposed to be legislated as per any other government agency in Queensland, but obviously feels that they have the opportunity to come up with their own policy guidelines not based in legislation. So with that in mind, what do we do when we get a decision on a PTA that we don't like, and or how do we submit PTAs to prevent this sort of thing from occurring? So the first step is when you lodge your permit to acquire in Queensland for whatever firearm you're going to use, just make sure you put down an appropriate reason for why you need to utilise that firearm. So a genuine reason is required within the Queensland Weapons Act, but quite often I see a lot of people who don't put adequate thought into what that reason is. And if you're going to use a firearm across multiple fields, i.e. it's for range use and you're also going to use it in the hunting field, or maybe it's just for hunting, please ensure that you put down a relevant level of detail. Now you'll notice on the Queensland PDA form, now that's electronic, there isn't a lot of room to put down that level of detail. So if you don't feel confident that you've captured the level of detail required to articulate exactly what you're going to utilise that firearm for in Queensland on your permit to acquire, then lodge your permit to acquire, put C accompanying letter, and then note your reference number, and then send an email through to weapons licensing either with an attachment or directly on the email with your reference number, and then your detailed explanation of the specifics behind why you require that type of firearm. Now, if you're using a larger cartridge or a larger calibre, which is completely justified in a number of areas, both on the range and in the hunting field, and again, I'll just highlight that at this point in time, no one's even clarified what their description of a larger calibre is, but obviously we can use some common sense there. Make sure you put that information in. Make sure that you are highlight that you are aiming to be compliant with humane destruction standards, and you're aiming to hunt the animals that you're going to hunt in accordance with animal welfare guidelines to ensure their humane destruction. Okay, so be really clear about that. There is a definite, genuine need for larger calibre firearms and bigger cartridges on the hunting field. There always has been, and that's why this has always never been a thing. So please make sure you put that level of detail, and again, don't be afraid to follow up with a email with your case reference number, a title that highlights the PTA and that case reference number through to the Queensland Police Weapons Licensing email. Now, when you receive your PTA, as per the one I read out just before, if it is not approving what you requested, or is an outright refusal with their reasons cited on there, again, don't just walk away at that point. If you're unhappy with that decision, because you did put the effort into putting in the correct detail on your form, please write a review. As it said there, you got 21 days to respond. If you're not satisfied that you've necessarily got the right words to put that in, then reach out to one of the many organisations or individuals who are around the place to assist you put the correct words to that document. Because again, a lot of this is in words, and in fairness, weapons licensing only have what's in front of them to look at. So basically, if you put in a little bit of effort and it's not very good, that's what they're going to see. So just make sure you put a little bit more effort in. Now, if you've conducted that, you've requested a review, it's been reviewed, and you've been informed that your decision is still the same, Queensland Weapons Licensing are a government agency. They must have a review process in place that is external, and in Queensland that review process is through QCAT. So a lot of people get a little bit turned off by the concept of going through QCAT because of potential expense, timelines, etc, etc. Look, don't be. At the end of the day, it is a process that is in place. It is part of the democratic environment that we are in. And if you're unhappy with the decision as a citizen in Australia, then you can request a review. and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. It won't come back on you in the future. It is absolutely your right, and you should do that. So it's really not that expensive to go through QCAT. Please do it. You can self-represent. It is about stating the facts of the case, and if at the end of the day Queensland Weapons Licensing have made a decision that is not in line with legislation and not in detailed consideration of the appropriate genuine reasons that you've provided, then you're going to come out on top. So the law is the law, no one's above it, and Queensland Weapons Licensing need to also run with that. So just because they have some guidelines in place currently and some agendas which they're pushing does not mean that they are right. So please follow up and make sure you go through with that. Okay, on the more generalist side of things, if you haven't been specifically affected by the current PTA situation, this potential information that's been bandied around by weapons licensing of a larger calibre ban coming into play in Queensland, then there's a couple of things you can certainly do to assist the cause. One of which is write to your local member. So I know a lot of people don't think this has any effect. It certainly does. So we have a new government in place in Queensland, and a big part of that was because of the poor performance by Labor previously and the fact that they weren't actively listening to constituents and assisting to resolve issues. So write to your local member, highlight what your concerns are. There's a number of good templates out there. I'm aware of one that's been done up by Aussie Reviews, which is great. Get that information out there, highlight your concerns, and ask for clarification around what is actually occurring within Queensland Weapons Licensing and whether these changes are in fact coming into play. So that's one of the things that you can do. You can write to the Queensland Police Minister. Again, he's an elected member of government. He has a responsibility, or his office does, to respond to reasonable questions from members of the public. Okay, a really big thing I would encourage all of you out there to do is join an organisation that supports your cause. Okay, so if we're divided, we fall. Where we're united, we get better information. We have more people following up on our vested interests. It is a much better situation all around. So what I'm getting at in reality land is join Shooters Union Australia if you're serious about seeing this sport continue into the future, because they have been a voice that is very reasonable and can see both sides of arguments. They follow up and they follow through. So, you know, I've been a member of Shooters Union for a long time myself. On the occupational shooting representative in Australia, and today my 5-year membership was running out, so I just signed up for a lifetime membership with Shooters Union Australia. It's not that expensive, you know, it's a couple $100 for 5 years. You know, I think it's around $900 if you want to join for lifetime. But Shooters Union Australia are representing the interests of shooters out there across the board in all fields. But they're not the only organisation. You know, there's plenty of organisations out there such as SSAA, also a member of them. So, you know, get involved. You know, if you don't want to see these changes occur, at the very least, join an organisation that supports the cause. Okay, it's really simple stuff. You know, you stand by and watch this. It's just going to keep coming. It's not going to stop. You need to stand up and do something about it now. Okay. Essentially, the message here is, you know, we've got a government agency in play with weapons licensing branch right now that appears to be overreaching pretty significantly in terms of their actual role. You know, that's really disappointing to see. It's not helpful to anyone, and it's a waste of people's time, effort, and resources in terms of having to deal with these additional issues which are not backed by any form of legislation at all. You know, if there was this much effort applied to removing illegal guns from criminal organisations as opposed to persecuting law-abiding firearms users, would be a lot better off in society. So I guess the key message out of this video, you know, apart from providing a little bit of an update on some pretty rubbery stuff that's coming out of weapons licensing, is the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So if you're happy with being treated this way for services that you're paying for from a government agency which you're mandated to use, then do nothing. Me personally, I'm very dissatisfied with what I'm seeing currently, and I would urge people to move forwards, do what you need to do. Don't accept decisions that don't make sense and aren't backed by logic or legislation. join a pro shooting organisation to support your cause, highlight to your local member where you're dissatisfied with the performance of that agency, and request clarification on exactly what is going on. Now again, I'll say it again, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. We need to not accept this level of performance from Weapons Licensing Branch. There is some streamlining that certainly needs to be done within that organisation to enhance communication, enhance systems, enhance processes, and make it simpler all round for everyone involved, them and the shooting community. Anyway, if you have any questions, post them in the comments, write your letters, join Shooters Union. Let's get going, people. It's time to get rolling in terms of supporting our own cause. Thanks for watching.